Alex, it's time for SEC Spotlight. It's officially week 5, and we've got a lot of good action taking place. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's drop our picks in for these as well. How about starting off with a good one? Number 4, LSU taking on number 13, Ole Miss. The Rebels just announced today something pretty big that I think LSU should be worried about, and I'll turn it over to Alex.
Big matchup here with LSU and Ole Miss. LSU ended up winning this game with a touchdown to Kyron Lacey, the late Kyron Lacey, who has since passed on, unfortunately. They were able to beat them with a touchdown to him. Last year, Ole Miss kind of unraveled later in the season, and we all know how that turned out for them. But LSU offense has been pretty putrid all year. Can't run the football. Starting running back Caden Durham's dealing with an ankle injury, and as running backs all know, dealing with ankle injury at any position in football, but especially running back on your plant foot, trying to make those jump cuts and get up the field. It's going to be difficult for him to be able to be as explosive as he has been, and behind him, not a lot of talent outside of Harlem Berry, who's a true freshman running back. Ole Miss, you talked about it, KJ. Trinidad Chambliss, the former D2 Ferris State quarterback, was announced as the starting quarterback for Ole Miss for this game. I think he is much better than Austin Simmons. Austin Simmons was shown to be the successor, the next Lane Kiffin disciple at quarterback, and through the first 2 games of the season struggled with turnovers and did not look as well as he should have. Trinidad Chambliss comes in the last 2 games, looks awesome, makes minimal mistakes, provides much more with his legs. He rushed for over 1,000 yards last season at Ferris State. I look for both these teams to be competitive in this matchup, KJ, and I don't think both these teams end up making the college football playoff. This could be a game that might decide it for them. Who do you have winning it?
I'm going to take Ole Miss. I really like this kid, Trinidad Chambliss. He's throwing the ball and running around like he's got something to prove coming over from D2 Ferris State. And look, the woes with LSU turning the football over, we told you before the season, Garrett Nussmeier on a lot of preseason lists, and rightfully so. He had a great season last year, but plagued of not putting the football to the right team. And the offense as a whole last year, it was either feast or famine. They were either getting 50 or 60 yards down the field, or they were losing 8 or 9. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of negative plays for LSU. And Ole Miss is coming off of a couple of hard-fought games, and they just made a quarterback change. I like Lane Kiffin and the Rebels to get this done.
Going into the season, it wasn't on my bingo board for LSU's defense to be better than their offense, but it has been throughout the early part of this football season. Garrett Nussmeier has not looked great. The running game, like I said earlier, abysmal. It was like that last year and hasn't shown any signs of improvement. The receivers, there's more weapons there with Aaron Anderson back after his awesome year last year. Berrien Brown from Kentucky. Xavier Thomas brings something in the ground game as well as the receiving game. But I'm not sold on the LSU offense to be able to keep up with Ole Miss's explosive offense. Trinidad Chambliss is so good at quarterback. And then you have Kewan Lacey at running back, who I think is underappreciated around the country. One of the better running backs, I think, not only in the SEC, but the country as a whole. And Ole Miss's, Lane Kiffin's offenses, running backs aren't, the feature thing. People don't look at it and go, yep, Ole Miss's running back's going to be the best thing in the world. I know Quinshon Judkins was that a couple of years ago for Lane Kiffin, but going into the season, nobody looked at Kewan Lacey and Ole Miss's rushing attack to be what they leaned on throughout a lot of football games, but it has been that way. And the defense for Ole Miss, while it has struggled at times, they'll be able to keep LSU's offense at bay, considering how bad LSU's offense has been and their best running back dealing with an ankle injury. So I'm going to take Ole Miss as well to pull off the upset in this matchup.
Yeah, it'll go down as an upset, but I think Ole Miss probably right now has the better offense.
Yeah, and it's hard to look away from that, what Lane Kiffin does on that side of the football. The biggest issue is just going to be their defense, because if LSU figures it out offensively, they're a hard team to beat. Moving on to the next game, KJ, your Auburn Tigers travel to Kyle Field in College Station to take on number 9 Texas A&M. I know you're going to want to spend a minute or two talking about what happened last week with Oklahoma and Auburn and how they're going to be able to move forward in this matchup and not look back like a lot of teams and coaches might catch themselves doing. But moving forward and looking at this matchup, do you think Auburn's able to get revenge from last game, or is Texas A&M just too much?
Well, first off, I want to go back to what you said about last week, and I'm glad you said that about some teams looking behind. And Auburn can't do that this week. You have to realize what's still in front of you. While, yes, there were several subjective calls that, make no mistake about it, definitely swayed the game, not once, not twice, but 3 times, especially the missed pass interference where the ref wasn't even looking at the play. That really infuriated me and all of Auburn's team and faithful. But as you said, you can't look at that, because what you have to understand is that, yeah, we had some things go against us, but we also gave up 10 sacks, and we can point the finger at the officials if we want to, but if we go back and if Jackson Arnold throws 5 of those away, they don't go down as sacks, and if the tackles didn't get blown off the ball, being Xavier Chaplin and Mason Murphy, who both highly touted out of the transfer portal, and they didn't have a good game. So you have to call things for what they are and absolutely put it behind you. Listen, I think you're going to get a really ticked off Auburn team Saturday. I told you that before we went on the set. They got a sour taste in their mouth from last week, and the best way to get a sour taste out of your mouth is to chase it down with something sweet, and that's sweet victory. You got to go out here and just execute the running game, getting back to rotating those backs out, giving Jackson Arnold easy attempts. We did have the downfield passing game going. He also missed a few makeable ones, up and down day. But Alex, overall, one thing I will absolutely credit, and I'll let you take over, is I loved the defense, and I was very critical of the tackling in the previous weeks and very critical of the performance overall. And I have to say, Auburn's defense took Oklahoma's receivers completely out of this contest for the majority
until
of
they tried
game.
to fake sub out.
Right, exactly. And not only that, but the linebackers tackled in the open field, I thought, so much better. It was a much improved game defensively. I was glad to see that against a high-powered Oklahoma offense. Going into this game this week, another high-powered offense in Texas A&M, rush the passer, clog the running lanes, get off the field on third down. And if we give Jackson Arnold some manageable pockets and manageable throws, our passing game can be good enough to go to Kyle Field and get the win. I'm taking the Tigers in a bounce-back performance.
I was overly concerned watching last week's Auburn football game with the offensive play calling from Hugh Freeze, because we talked about and praised his play calling in the first few weeks of the season to not reverting back to what he did last year and forcing stuff and forcing passes and QB runs when they didn't need to be forced. But it's like he completely ignored what worked in the first couple of few games and just did what he did last year and forced stuff that wasn't there. I don't know how many times I saw a QB draw or a QB run get no yards or turn into a sack. It was mind-boggling to me and really did bother me going forward for this Auburn football team, because you had Jeremiah Cobb break off a huge run in the second half, and I didn't see him again.
Had 4 carries the whole game.
I was sitting there. Your 3 best weapons on the offensive side of the football are your running backs, Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Alston. And you didn't use them in that football game. And I get it, your offensive line wasn't blocking well, and the strength of Oklahoma's defense is on their defensive line. But you got to keep them honest.
Yep.
They knew what was going to happen running the football. They knew it was going to be Jackson Arnold QB draw. They knew it was just going to be a Cam Coleman pass. There was no creativity from Hugh Freeze in that football game.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same could have been said about the passing game, because, we used our receivers in Cam Coleman, a little bit in Horatio Fields, but, why do we feel like every time we have to throw the football, it's got to be a 40-yard post pattern? Where's the slants? Where's the screens? Where's the digs? Where's the curls? You got to incorporate some of that other stuff in the mix as well. If we do that Saturday and have a more balanced attack, I still think we should get the job done against Texas A&M. But very good point about the play calling and the seeable patterns. You cannot be predictable.
The benefit for Auburn get their offense back on track is Texas A&M's defense. While you have a defensive-minded head coach in Mike Elko and some talent on that side of the football for the Aggies, their defense has not looked good all year long. They're giving up 350 yards per game, 28 points per game, which is worst in the SEC, and they have played UTSA, Utah State, and Notre Dame. And I get it, Notre Dame's an outlier there with them being a really good football team, despite their record. But giving up 20-plus points to Utah State and UTSA, not a good look.
Are you predicting a shootout Saturday?
I'm predicting a shootout, and I'm going to take Texas A&M just because Marcel Reed has been in those type of games before. He has the weapons around him. Mario Craver is one of the most underappreciated receivers in college football. If you look at his stats coming over from Mississippi State, you wouldn't expect him to be the way he's being right now. But after the catch, him and Casey Concepcion, who's from NC State, they're hard to tackle. Mario Craver averages 14 yards after the catch. So when he catches the football, if it's a screen, he's getting the first down on average. And I do worry about that with Auburn's corners being so young. I know they played great last week. KJ, you talked about that. But there's always going to be those youthful moments when they make those mistakes. They miss those tackles. They bite on something that they don't need to bite on. And that's going to be the reason I think Auburn ends up losing this football game is what A&M has on the offensive side of the football, and the experience they have there is going to be too much for Auburn to overcome. And the last of our SEC spotlight here, KJ, really the big game of the weekend, for me at least, being an Alabama fan. Number 17, Alabama, goes to Athens to play number 5, Georgia. This game last year looked like in the early first quarter it was going to be a blowout. Jalen Milroe was having his way. Ryan Williams doing all his acrobatics and whatnot, ended up doing that late in the game as well. But the offense for Alabama fell off the wheel. The wheels fell off in that second quarter and really in that second half entirely. And Georgia was able to come back in this game, and it took a Jalen Milroe prayer to Ryan Williams down the field to ice it, and then as well as a Xavier Brown pick six in the end zone after Carson Beck tried to do it 2 different times and getting picked off in the last time. Do you think Georgia's able to get their revenge in this matchup at home, KJ, or does Alabama make it 2-0?
I think Georgia should be in every position to win this game going into the fourth quarter. I think they can come out and try to run the football on a Alabama defensive line that's had good moments and bad moments at times this year. I think they can make enough work to loosen up passing lanes to get them into some easy rhythm throws in the fourth quarter. But however, you have not been able to overcome the Tide. And right now, I got to be honest with you, I'm not super sold on Georgia's defense. I've said this to you about Auburn and how I worried more about us on the road last week at Norman against how I'm going to feel in a few weeks when we play them at home, simply because I don't think the defense is as good as it's supposed to be on paper.
They don't have the dudes.
I think they're very young, and they've banked on a lot of 5 stars playing like 5 stars, and they maybe have 2 of them that are and 2 of them that are not. And right now, it's just not there. Tennessee carved them up. Much respectable offense in Tennessee. No disrespect there. But I'm just going to say that I don't think Georgia's going to be able to stop what Alabama can present on offense. I think they can do a little too many different things, and I think it's going to be too much. I think Ty Simpson and Jeremy Bernard have a great day. Obviously, Ryan Williams, when he's out there on the field, he's getting looked at double-teamed as the number 1 receiver, and through the season, the number 1 receiver for the Tide has been by leaps and bounds Jeremy Bernard, so he just eats off of what Ryan Williams can open up. I think that kind of happens against Georgia, and I think the Tide find a way to get it done in Athens.
What people have been talking about is Ryan Williams, this, Ryan Williams that. He did all this in the last year's game. We got to double team him. We got to do this and that to shut him down. But what they also don't realize is, like you talked about, KJ, Jeremy Bernard's growth in just a short year has helped this passing offense get way better. And not only him, you have Isaiah Horton coming over from Miami, a matchup nightmare, a speedster. Latazier Brooks, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago in his play against UL Monroe. He's a weapon. He's fast, one of the fastest players on the team. Rico Scott as well, a willing blocker, one of the best blockers at the receiver position. Josh Cuevas at tight end. He's always a threat to get streaking down the field. And then Jam Miller, getting him back in this matchup. He has scored on wheel routes in last year against Georgia. He did it a couple years ago as well. That's been a issue for Kirby Smart's defense is the running back wheel route. Even at his time in Alabama, getting that matchup on a linebacker with a speedy running back, it was over for the Bama defense. Getting Jam Miller back and Tim Keenan back is going to be a big help to Alabama going forward. I do worry about Georgia's defense, like you talked about, KJ. Alabama, if they're able to stretch them horizontally with the run and they're able to stretch them vertically with the pass, they'll have a lot of success like they did last year. Tennessee showed them a blueprint to be able to succeed, just like Florida State showed Georgia a blueprint to succeed against Alabama's defense. I just think Alabama has too much momentum going into this game. They're too hungry. They know what's at stake. If they lose this game, you're really behind the 8 ball. The rest of the season, you can't afford to lose really another game throughout your schedule. And Georgia, they're undefeated right now. They came out barely hanging by a thread against Tennessee a couple weeks ago. I just think Alabama, they're too hungry. They know they have too much to prove, and they're going to be able to beat Georgia in this matchup. All right, KJ, those are our 3 big SEC spotlight games this week. Before we get into our blitz picks, which is going to be the rest of the SEC slate, who do you have on upset alert this week in the conference?
Man, upset alert this week in the conference. Well, I think an obvious one is Ole Miss and LSU. So I'm gonna for now say Ole Miss and LSU. What do you think, Alex?
I think Tennessee should be on upset alert. I know they looked great a couple weeks ago against Georgia, and they had a great first quarter, but they took their foot off the gas. The offense sputtered out of control. They put up 40 points nonetheless. I look at Mississippi State, Blake Shapen at quarterback, the two-headed monster running back, Fluff Bothwell, and Devon Booth, the receiving weapons, Brennan Thompson, Anthony Evans III. And then I look at Tennessee's defense. The worst passing defense in the SEC. Granted, they're down their 2 best corners, Jermon McCoy and Ricky Gibson Jr., but Jeff Lebby loves to sling the football around the field, following under Lane Kiffin's tutelage there. I think that's going to be the issue for Tennessee in this game, is Mississippi State's going to have their way throwing the football, and Mississippi State's defensive backs have been playing really well throughout the season. If Mississippi State's able to win this game, the defensive line is going to have to step up and be able to shut down Star Thomas and those guys in the backfield to be able to pull off the upset.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I'll give you one more before we exit. Don't sleep on Arkansas giving Notre Dame everything they can handle. Arkansas's had several tough losses this year. This is a long trip from South Bend for Notre Dame. I just wouldn't be surprised to see Arkansas give Notre Dame a good game, coming off what people are calling an embarrassing loss against Memphis. I actually disagree. I think Memphis is a good football team and could very well get considered for the football playoff.
You know, KJ, as you were talking about that, an Arkansas player actually just fumbled again in the red zone. It's so unfortunate for Arkansas fans, but let's move on to the blitz picks. KJ, pick the rest of the SEC slate we haven't talked about yet. You just mentioned it a couple seconds ago. Number 22, Notre Dame, traveling to take on Arkansas. Who wins this one?
Oh, I'm sticking by my upset pick. I'm going to say the Hogs. I think they've been really close several times at winning some big games. Notre Dame ranked, but have lost a few times to some good football teams, no doubt about that. But this is a long trip for them. And Arkansas comes in battle-tested. Some haven't went their way. They have a long, lanky, athletic quarterback. And I don't know if the Hog home crowd can make enough noise. It would not surprise me at all to see Arkansas hand Notre Dame a loss.
I'm going with Notre Dame Fighting Irish, another team where you're 1-2 on the season, can't afford that third loss with the rest of your strength of schedule and some pitiful opponents you have going forward, USC being one of the last ones you actually play that is halfway decent. Have to win this matchup, and I think they do. CJ Carr, they're hungry. They have something to prove. It's a must-win game for them. Arkansas, it's still a must-win game for them, but I think the win's taken out of their sails after the last 2 matchups, and I didn't see the dog in them that I see in the players on Notre Dame.
Nope, that's fair.
Next one, Utah State versus number 18, Vanderbilt. Any discussion here with Utah State coming to Vandy? Might have been a couple of years ago, but now there's no way.
And Diego Pavia might go for 400 through 3 quarters.
Next one, the upset pick for me, number 15, Tennessee, traveling to take on Mississippi State. Do you see it as an upset too, KJ, or do you think the Vols prevail?
I think the Vols prevail, but I do think it'll be close. That's not a bad upset pick at all. I like what Mississippi State has done to improve. Obviously, still not near the topper echelon of the conference. I think Tennessee may have one too many playmakers for them, but I think Mississippi State can definitely make this game close. I do think the Volunteers prevail.
The big thing for Tennessee or Mississippi State in this matchup is going to be able to control time of possession. That was the key for Georgia in their win against Tennessee, is they dominated it. They had 38 minutes of time of possession. If you're able to do that and keep Joey Aguilar and the strength of the team off the field in the offense, you'll be set up for success for Mississippi State. And I think that's going to be one of the main reasons they're able to pull off the upset. Next one, UMass traveling to take on number 20 Missouri. Don't think there's really any discussion needed here. UMass, bottom of the barrel college football team, need to be relegated to Division II or something. Never been good. So we'll take Missouri, KJ.
Missouri can send the Water Boys and the scout team.
And last SEC matchup this week, Kentucky traveling to take on the dud of the year, South Carolina Gamecocks. I called it, KJ. Haven't looked good. Who you taking?
Well, I drank the Kool-Aid for 1 week. I drank the South Carolina Kool-Aid for 1 week and was quickly reminded of just how much their previous backfield, Rocket Sanders, and the other guys that they lost at receiver, how much those guys really meant. You have one decent weapon in Nick Harbor, not really a whole lot else. And on defense, they have rushed the passer with Dylan Stewart, obviously at times. But, this is a game that I think they're probably going to come in and be sleepwalking to. Kentucky, not a very good opponent by any means with the offense. But if Kentucky can find a way to keep South Carolina's offense on the sidelines, I think they could make it close through 3 or 4 quarters. I think South Carolina's probably going to come out on top, but another one that wouldn't surprise me at all to see go the other direction.
I'm the same way. It's going to be a competitive game. South Carolina, I don't know what's going on with them. I'll talk about them in a few minutes, actually, KJ, but Kentucky's the worst team in the SEC. I don't think they have enough offensively. The defense has shown flashes. South Carolina it's just too much. If this was any other SEC team playing South Carolina, I would take them in this matchup. But right now, it's the worst team in the SEC. I'm taking the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. But like we said, don't be surprised to see it close.
Yeah. Kentucky played Ole Miss close. Granted, it was Austin Simmons playing quarterback. You never know with them. They're always one of those teams where they randomly show up in these random matchups throughout the SEC schedule. This might be one of them. It might not. We'll see. Moving on, the next thing, KJ, the next 2 things, the In the Hot Seat segment as well as the On the Rise segment. In the Hot Seats, where we talk about which coach, team, or player has the most to prove this weekend. What coach, player, or team has the most to prove this weekend for you, KJ?
I think the team with the most to prove is the Auburn Tigers. I'm gonna call my team out. I think that there was a lot of finger pointing immediately as soon as the game was over, and rightfully so. But these guys have a lot to prove still. I mean, like we said, you have the season in front of you. Outside of Georgia and Alabama, there's nobody on the schedule that you look at for Auburn and say you can't play in that game. But there's still things and inconsistencies that are keeping us from being that good to great scenario. As far as a team goes in the SEC, there's just another level that we have not gotten to, and really it starts up front on the offensive line and the passing game being in sync. Coach has got to put us in some better positions. I think you alluded to that earlier. Just a lot of predictable play calling patterns, making it kind of really easy to gauge as a defense. And I think it hurt Jackson Arnold, and because of that, he started anticipating his throws, immediately rolling out when he didn't need to. You saw him miss some. So just got to get things back in sync. And I'll double down on one more from my hot seat, one of my hot seat takes last week, and that is Cade Klubnik, Dabo Sweeney, and Clemson. These guys were getting thumped by Syracuse, the Orange. Now, I can understand if this was in basketball, but guys, you're under the lights of the gridiron, man. What are you doing? And I can just see Dabo trying to dial up somebody in Alabama's program like, hey, do y'all have anywhere for me? I don't know how Alex would feel about that.
No, thank you. I'm like Tyler from Spartanburg. No, thank you. Dabo.
Cade Klubnik, and then Cade Klubnik is, in interviews just throwing shade. I don't know if you saw that, but he's just throwing shade at his teammates and at the play caller, and it's just like, dude, you haven't completed more than 60% of your passes. Like you don't have room to get on the mic and say that. I don't know what's going on with Clemson. My on the hot seat this week is Dabo Swinney, Cade Klubnik, and Clemson, and the team with the most to prove for me is the Auburn Tigers, just because I'm critical as a fan.
Who's on my hot seat? Mike Shula and the South Carolina offense.
Shocker.
Big shocker for the Gamecocks. 15th worst in the country in total offensive yardage, worst in the SEC. Awful. Last week against Missouri, 22 carries, a whopping -9 rushing yards. -9. I get it. It's an SEC opponent.
Other way, guys.
But to finish with -9 is pretty bad. Lenora Sellers, don't know what he's doing. Instead of moving up in the pocket, he decides to run backwards, going the wrong direction. Not sure if he's confused what team he's actually playing for.
He thinks he's Johnny Manziel.
The running backs, I was told that were going to be all great and wonderful this year for them. Faison coming over from Utah State, 1,000-yard rusher last year.
What's he done this year, Alex?
Through their games right now, KJ, 33 carries, 140 yards, and a touchdown. Their team as a whole is averaging 2.6 yards per carry. I'm really concerned about them. There was all this hype going into the season. Lenora Sellers, Heisman hopeful, Nick Harbor, this athletic specimen. Offense awful. I mean that's the bread and butter, the simplest way you can put it.
Couldn't score if they were the only ones on the field.
To finish a game with -9 rushing yards against the Missouri team, like I said, who has a great defense, not the best in the SEC, definitely not the best in the country right now, even though the stats might show that. To finish with that tells me all I need to know. There's not a dog in that backfield right now. And the offense, there's no motivation, there's no oomph. There's no urgency. Lenora Sellers, it's his show. Mike Shula has to figure it out. I don't know what to do. Shane Beamer has continually hired terrible assistants. Mike Shula is just one of many that's on the coaching staff right now. And I don't know if Shane Beamer's checked out with the Virginia Tech job opening up or what, but the South Carolina offense been asleep at the wheel since the season started. Called it out before the season even started myself, KJ. Said they were going to be a dud. And sure, they could turn the season around. They're not 0-4. They're 2-2. You can figure it out. Season's not over. But what I've seen thus far, there's not a lot of bright spots.
No, not a lot of bright spots and a whole lot of shade. And I ain't talking about the kind that makes you feel all cooled off and ready to go. I'm talking about the kind that'll make you want to turn the other direction.
Last thing before we take a timeout, KJ, the on the rise. Each time we pick a player, coach, or team that has shown improvement or come onto the scene throughout the college football season. Who is your coach, team, or player on the rise?
You can call me going with the trends or not, but I'm going to take Syracuse, man. You've had a pretty good year so far coming in for all stretches of the imagination. You just took down a Dabo Swinney-led team. Granted, they may not be great this year, but it still is Clemson, and it's a good win for Syracuse. So I like what Syracuse has got going on. I also really, from Auburn's game, I like giving one to Auburn and one to somebody outside of there. One guy that I really thought played well for Auburn was on the defense, and I've been kind of critical of him at times, and that's Kieron Crawford. I think he came in, and I think he ended up having 5 or 6 tackles, but really kept us in the game as well on the defensive side of the ball. Him and Keldrick Falk, really a dynamic pass rushing combo. He's on the rise for me. I think I mentioned him earlier on in this year as well. But I really like what Syracuse is doing. Maybe not just a basketball school anymore.
Fran Brown's going to be a hot name in the coaching carousel this offseason, what he's done at Syracuse. But for the Orange, starting quarterback Steve Angeli's out for the season. Tough hit for them, how well he's been playing. Ricky Collins, the backup, he's not a slouch coming over from LSU. He was in the QB battle with Angeli, so it's not like it was just a steep drop-off from one to the other. So it's not nothing to say, oh, Syracuse's season's over. They're still a good football team.
Yeah, they can win some games.
My coach and team on the rise this week, or coach and player, sorry, Eli Drinkowitz and running back Ahmad Hardy at Missouri. Drinkowitz, there were some question marks going into the season. Can he be a good coach without Brady Cook and Luther Burden and Theo Weiss Jr. and all these weapons he has on offense? And he's proven he can. He reloaded in the portal, bringing in Bo Perula from Penn State, who's looked like the better quarterback than Drew Aller. So leaves me questioning, did James Franklin make the right decision, letting him go and keeping Drew Aller at quarterback? And then Ahmad Hardy. He was a highly touted transfer, but I don't think people expected him to play as well as he has been throughout the year. He's second in the country in rushing yards and first in the SEC with 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. The next closest in the SEC is Jeremiah Cobb with 375, so a pretty big differential there. And it's been refreshing to see Eli Drinkowitz kind of switch up his play calling and adapt to what he has around him and what he's brought in through the portal. Because there's so many coaches around this country that get this talent in and they see what the talent brings to the table, and they're just stubborn and they keep the same play calling they had with quarterback A instead of switching to the strengths for quarterback B who comes in. And to see Drinkowitz be able to adapt his offense to fit the personnel he has every season is refreshing for me as a college football fan, with all the stubbornness we see not only in college football but as well as the NFL and high school football.
Yeah, that's a really good call. Getting back to the basics, but making changes as well to adapt to what you're seeing elsewhere is always a way to be a step ahead.